I'm making this three-part video just to basically focus on what can be done for PvP, what can be done for PvE, and what can be done in the general scope of the game just to make it better for us players. I doubt it'll be included in Title Update 6. Maybe it can be discussed with the upcoming ETF Delta. Who knows? Maybe there's possibilities. I haven't given up hope completely on the game. With that being said, let's roll into what I think they could do to improve PvP in this game. Finally add the hardcore skirmish mode. A lot of us have already been playing the conflict, and it's all normalized, I'm not even sure what the term they use for it is, but low intensity I think is what they call it. It's fine for a little while, but a lot of us want the non-normalized kind of ODZ version of conflict. We want classic skirmish. It's very, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, having the normalized skirmish mode, especially when it's kind of skewed towards one specific style, especially when skill power is the only thing that's not normalized, it makes it very easy to game the system, right? You can basically get all max rolls, and just basically all you have to do is focus on in one tiny little roll and ignoring all skill power until you want. Then basically you just max out your skill power. It's very annoying. I don't like the way that normalization happens in the game. I don't like normalization in this game, and I would really like, and I'm sure a lot of players would finally like, to see a hardcore, high intensity, whatever we want to call it, conflict skirmish mode. I don't really care for control that much, but either way, they could just adding the hardcore element would make PvP, at least in the organized PvP, a lot better. The second thing would be to add maybe different modes to the rotation. I get it, the control points and classic skirmish are great, but it would be nice to get some sort of different activities in there, maybe some sort of bomb defusal mode or some sort of capture the flag type mode. My third suggestion would be to add a PvP like horde mode, and that basically be, you could have 8 players queue up, obviously just like regular skirmish, but 4 players would obviously control their normal characters and just try to make it through waves as long and as far as they could. And then you'd have the other 4 players who would be match made into the AI side. So basically they would be able to earn points or earn currency or whatever to slowly select bigger and better and badder and more skilled enemies. They could probably even use it to eventually unlock like named enemies that they could use. And then after they unlock the named enemies, then of course they could buy points into unlocking different skills or different perks for those enemies, something like that. And that would give a lot more depth to PvP than just the basic you versus me. And it would also help mitigate a lot of the OP build type mentality, because one, if you have a PvE type build, you could use it in this horde mode. You could have your damage to elites in there, and that way, when you're fighting players, your PvE build is actually effective in this PvP mode. Another way to look at it would be, it's not incredibly off balance, because you're not using a build as far as being on the AI side, right? You're just kind of trying to fit in with the AI and kind of use swarm tactics, right? So it could just be an interesting mode. And I mean, I understand that it might diminish some of the player base in each specific mode, but it's just an idea. It sounds interesting to me, and I think I would definitely be willing to play that for quite some time, depending on how good they could make it. My fourth suggestion for this video on how they could improve PvP is to add versus missions, or maybe even just calling them PvP missions. And basically the concept of that is kind of simple. It kind of comes from playing Left 4 Dead. And if you ever played the original Left 4 Dead, you'd know that there was the mode where you could actually play as the special infected to stop the other players from basically getting through the level. So basically be 4 players playing as the infected and 4 players playing as the humans. I really like that mode because I especially like playing as the infected. But in this, I could imagine that having players actually take over some of the AI would do a lot of good things for the game and for multiple reasons. The first one would be that it increases the difficulty or potential difficulty of the game just by giving it that human feel without having it become overpowering to the point where they're just so OP with their, PvP builds, right? They don't have a PvP build, just like in the Horde mode that I was just talking about. They have the AI build. They're just using it in a maybe better, maybe smarter, or potentially even worse way than the computer would. The second part of that would be that it adds a little bit more randomness to the missions, so that it doesn't feel like the same old mission over and over again, but it adds this new life to it because you don't exactly know how a player is going to approach every situation. It could be completely different. They could go start off doing one thing, and then they could just decide that they're going to switch it up in the middle, and you never really know how a player is going to act or approach a challenge. So having players take over AI definitely adds a new level of challenge, a new level of randomness, and can even add some more fun back into the game because obviously it gives those PvP players who like to gank people in the dark zone, right? It gives them a chance to do that, but they don't have the extreme advantage that they would, let's say catching you unaware in the DZ. At the same time, the players that don't really like PvP might enjoy this a little bit more just for the simple fact that they're not fighting another player's build. They're not fighting another player's, overpowered meta. They're just fighting an enemy that they know is there, that they can detect ahead of time, that they know they're going to come across, and that's the entire goal. So it takes away a lot of the unfair advantage from the hardcore PvP players' perspective, and gives basically just kind of more interesting feel to everyone involved. Now, obviously, the loot for that, would probably have to work a little bit differently, depending on if you got wiped. Let's say that the PvPers on the AI team, they won, or they caused the PvE team to wipe. Then maybe that PvP team gets their rewards for the mission, whatever, and then they get recycled. So another team would come in. So that way, it's not just a constant grief cycle where you just can't get past these guys and there's nothing you can do. And on the flip side of that, like if you actually did beat the PvP team, you get extra rewards at the end of the mission, whatever. This mode would not be mandatory, right? You wouldn't enter into a mission and all of a sudden there's players, that are controlling AI. This would be, there's normal, there's hard, there's challenging, there's heroic, and then there's another modifier, just like you can select invaded or not. There would be PvP. So you can select PvP normal, PvP hard, PvP challenging. That kind of thing. And obviously, it doesn't really affect the player's skill, but it does affect their, basically, their controlled character's stats. So, they're not going to be doing as much damage on normal as they would on heroic, or they're not going to be as super OP on challenging or something like that. And I mean, obviously there would be special considerations that would need to be done. You couldn't just give players heroic mode enemies who can literally just charge you right into the face and just down you and just do that all the time. Like there has to be some sort of balancing act that ensures that players on the PvP team aren't just abusing the PvE mechanics to their their own griefing benefit. So it would be something that would be interesting to do. Definitely have to keep an eye on how make sure that it would actually balance out. But I think it would provide a lot of interesting gameplay. And so my last suggestion for PvP would just be to expand the sizes of the DZ servers. Maybe even just adding 4 more players or so, or even 2. Adding a little bit more players would help with some of the emptiness that a lot of these DZs suffer from. I don't exactly understand why it's countering so empty all the time and why you hardly ever see other players in them. With the exception of hardcore PvP servers, you hardly ever see anyone. In the more PvE oriented, where people are just when players are just running from landmark to landmark, it's a lot harder to actually find players and do stuff. And if you kill them, then they just leave. Or if you try to have a fight with them, it might go on for like 1 or 2 battles, and then they leave, or you just can't find them ever again. It's just kind of it's a lot of running and it's a lot of boredom. If you have more people, it's more likely that you'll get into actual servers where people have kind of the same level of enjoyment for things that you do. But with that, I think that the areas need to be enlarged by a little bit, not overly huge. I don't think that they should be enlarged to the point where it's just, again, you can't find anyone. But I think with an increase in players, and I think an increase to the DZ size, maybe somewhere in the realm of each DZ should increase by like 20%, maybe. Just like get in another couple, 1 or 2 city blocks or something like that in the area. For the South DZ, I think it might be a little bit complicated, but I think there's some coast area there that they can still expand into. But either way, that's what I think. I think the PvP needs. I think they need the expanded DZs. I think they need the hardcore skirmish modes. I think they need some sort of interest with PvE itself. So having these missions tie into PvE, giving kind of a best of both worlds feel, where the PvE players don't feel like they're being targeted unfairly, and PvP players still get a little bit of this griefing action that they might enjoy. And then also the PvP horde mode, where you're just fighting the waves and waves of player-controlled AI enemies. I think these ideas could be good for PvP, and I think they could definitely expand the offering of what people actually want to do in the PvP. Because obviously you can't just, things kind of get stale, and if you don't balance it and you don't keep it active and keep it refreshed and keep it new, it's just going to get boring for a large portion of the community. Those are not all the things that I think would improve PvP. But those are the things that I think are PvP specific that the game needs to do, just to bring new life into the game and stuff like that. I would do have in the 2 other videos I will make that you'll obviously see some of the other suggestions that I have, and that'll contain some of the more meat and potatoes of the entire game to improve. This one was just for PvP specific. So thank you guys for watching. If you like the suggestions, give me a thumbs up. Maybe hit that subscribe button, ding the bell for notifications. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.